DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. We're joined now by David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz. David, good morning.
Good morning, David James. Oh, my gosh. Another Friday, another week complete, another brilliant morning with two of the greatest of all time. Gosh, it feels so good. And Patrick and Ann, I owe you a text message because yours was awesome. I appreciate it immensely. Thank you very much. Of no interest, but I sincerely appreciate the sentiment.
Okay. Yeah, gotcha.
David James, you didn't text me this week. You didn't even stop by to say hi at the broadcast booth. We've been home for like a 13-day homestand, and I haven't seen you once.
I came by the broadcast booth and talked at length with Bowler and Thurl, and you were not on the premises. I do not know where you were. But I looked, and I walked right by, and you weren't there. Booner wasn't there, but I ran into Booner in another place in the arena just by accident and chatted him up.
All right. Well, then there was the love, and I missed it.
Yep.
You're still the greatest of all time. Makes me feel good.
I'm curious what you think. There's been, obviously some big trades. Jimmy Butler threw quite the fit in Miami, but ended up in Golden State. And the East Coast woke up to the news that Luka Doncic had been traded while they were sleeping. And now the Lakers and Warriors are both winning at a pretty good clip and climbing in the standings. Do you take either one or both of them as serious contenders to win it all, or they've improved their place in the pecking order, but ultimately they're going to go home disappointed before it gets to the big show?
I'll take one of the two as a title contender.
Explain.
Which one do you think I will take as a title contender?
The Lakers, because you'll love Luka Doncic.
Right. I just think Luka's top 5 player in the world. Steph might be a top 5 player in the world still. I'm not totally certain of that. And I hope he is because I love Steph. But he was last night, certainly. But I'm not sure he's a top 5 player in the world. And I just think that team doesn't quite have enough. The Lakers are obviously lacking, but Jackson Hayes is playing fairly well inside. And I just, frankly, LeBron's been incredible in the midst of all of this. And Luka's great. And they haven't really figured out how to play together yet. And at some point they will, and Luka will figure this out, and LeBron will figure out how to play off the ball a little bit. And I wouldn't want to have to knock them out 4 out of 7. I wouldn't want to knock Steph out 4 out of 7 either. So if nothing else, I would say that they're both going to be really, really difficult playoff outs, but I think they're both I think there's 3 title contenders in the West, and I think the Lakers are one of the 3.
We've talked about how stats sometimes can be empty for losing teams, but I'm wondering, in regard to Kessler, the stats that he's putting up, in my mind, they would be transferable on a winning team because nobody wants their shot blocked and everybody wants a rebound and all that type of stuff. So I'm thinking that they're legit when the team gets better, that he can do what he's doing. What do you think about that?
It's a great question because I am of the same school as you are, that every game has 90 points minimum and 45 rebounds minimum. And so if you're just on the floor for long enough, you'll do it. There is also a school of thought, Jared Dubin has written about this, who's got a Substack account, that there is also only so many players can go have 22 points and 17 rebounds in a game. Like, it just doesn't matter how much you're on the floor. Like, certain guys can't do that. Like, if you look at some of our younger players, like, you could put Cody Williams on the floor right now for kind of as long as you want, and he wouldn't be able to do, there's a limit to what he can do, right? Like, he's just not good enough. He's not strong enough. He's not physically at that point in his career. He'll hopefully get there, but right now he's not. So I go a little bit both ways on this. I do feel like just Walker's overall performance. So, rim, he's defending the second most amount of shots in the NBA. He's, I think, 4th best at affecting the shot. Like, everyone's trying to make their shot, right? To backing up your point. So yes, I do feel like Walker more so than some others, and maybe at that position more so than some others, the statistics that you get even in a losing team, and even just on kind of, we're not at that stage yet, but there is a point of the season where I really start to not follow the stats, that what we're seeing is pretty legitimate. So I'm with you. I think you have to be a little careful, but I'm generally with you.
Now, exact same question. Take out the name Walker Kessler, put in the name Isaiah Collier. looking at assists, looking at his turnovers, looking at his shooting percentage, and maybe we should look at the other end of the floor defensively as well, but offense is so much more fun. Go ahead, assess.
So I think you have to be a little careful just in, like, if you get 27 minutes a night on the floor, what do you just naturally get, right? Like, I call it the Jeff Teague factor. Like, I'm not sure that, like, Jeff Teague was ever that good. But in Atlanta, he played like 30 minutes a night all the time, and he averaged like 17 points and 6 assists, 7 assists a game. And sometimes I think NBA point guards just have the ball in their hands enough that that's what they do. The way the game is now, there's 100 possessions, it's open floor, things like that. So that's where I get a little bit more tentative on some of these. But I would say in Collier's case, you know, when you're leading the NBA in assists, he's not, but he's like 4th in the league in assists in the month of February. Okay, well, you're in pretty elite category right there. You're doing something differently than everybody else. When you're, you know, I think the Jazz TV crew had an interesting stat, like on rookies who've averaged this many assists in a month. Like, it's not very many people. You know, and like if you look at right now, the guys who have as many assists as he does in a game, I think it's Cade Cunningham, Trae Young, and Nikola Jokic. It's a pretty good category. So I do think that he's doing something differently than the rest of the league while having those minutes. And so in that sense, he has really, really good vision and creates. Now, at the same time, he's not a very good shooter. So his first option is always to pass. And, you know, as he develops these other skills, I would suspect that his assist numbers go down a little bit because he becomes a better shooter and a better scorer in those opportunities.
I look at Keontae George and Sexton as sort of duplicate, and they both have value in the league, and I think Sexton right now would have more value. But if they decide to go in one direction or the other, what is their worth on the open market, each player?
Colin Sexton and who?
George.
So I thought you said. I just thought you were going to say when most people are comping Colin Sexton to a similar player that's the exact same, I hear Jordan Clarkson. So that's kind of what I was thinking you were going to say. So anyway.
Well, I'm looking down the line, not right now.
Colin's one of the best
will be on the team down the line.
Colin's one of the best, just pure bucket getting, off ball or on just drive to the basket, beat your man, get a basket guys in the league. They're just, his value is that in the league where sometimes it just gets hard to score, he can do it every time. Not every time, but he can go get you a bucket, right? Like if you're having an offensive drought and you have Colin Sexton on your roster, you can go in there and score. And Colin can do that. And that's actually really special. There just aren't that many guys in the NBA that can do that. I don't know yet that Keontae has figured out what his skill is. I do think the most exciting thing going on with Keontae is that his shooting percentage when he plays with Isaiah Collier's effective field goal percentage is about 6 or 7 percentage points better than when he plays without him. And so that tells me that he is just a lot more natural off ball. Doug Christie was really interesting talking about this the other day, that what Malik Monk is going through, because Monk's playing point guard for Sacramento, and he's now shooting 38% from the field and 29% from three. And he's like, a scorer hits a bucket, they don't want the ball coming back next time in their hands to start. They want to, like, start off ball, get a pick, be moving, catch the ball, now be in a rhythm. But, like, when you suddenly bring the ball to the floor, there's 10 eyes on you immediately. And there's very few players in the league, probably at this point, Cade Cunningham, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic, maybe Trae Young, like, who can handle having 10 eyes on them to start a possession every single time. And so a real scorer, Steph Curry does it some of them, but he actually, more often than not is going to come off the ball, get it in a rhythm. And you can see that is how Keontae works much better. And so I think we're just learning right now of what Keontae can do off the ball. I think all the time he spent the last 18 months on the ball will be really, really valuable to him, because still a huge amount of that off the ball is, we bring it up, swing it to the side, something doesn't develop, we go second side to Key, Walker comes and sets a pick, and now you're playing that same pick and roll that you played with 10 eyes on you, but not as many, and you have the defensive rotation so much easier, and if you're doing it off the wing, it's one read instead of two if you're doing it off the top. So I think it's just much easier, and he'll benefit off that. The other thing is I've done a bunch of research on pick and roll. in the collegiate game, in the NBA game, it takes about 5,000 pick and rolls before you kind of hit your peak of where you need to be. And so it's 3 or 4 years of 1,000, 1,200, 1,300 pick and rolls every year. And so he still needs to be getting a lot of these pick and roll actions to be able to develop his pick and roll understanding. It takes a long time. It's hard.
There's a thing in the NBA, and we're seeing it with Walker Kessler. You don't really know what you have until you see a player in the league for 3 years. And next year will be Keontae George's third year. Given everything you just said, do the Jazz need to go out and acquire a veteran point guard, not necessarily a starter, maybe a backup, but somebody so he doesn't have to play point guard minutes? There's other options on the roster, and they can see him off the ball over the course of a season. And if he has a lot of success, and if the shooting percentages go way up, and they've ticked up just a little bit, I mean, from 33 to 34% in the three-point shooting, but if they go up, the league's going to adjust. You've talked to us millions of times about how quickly the league adjusts. And then to see how he adjusts, don't they need a full season info to really know what they have?
So your assumption here is your starting point guard next year is Isaiah Collier.
He's one of the two. Isaiah Collier's one of the two. Bring in another one so Keontae George can be off the ball the entire season. And now here I'm assuming that there aren't, 2 7-player trades that totally turn the roster upside down this summer, which may well happen. Who knows?
Right.
But if they bring the group back intact, have all of his minutes off the ball so you can see what you have in case he does take a huge step forward.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would we don't really have a second point guard on the roster anymore after the Patty Mills trade.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that Patty Mills, Patty was awesome, but he's also, 40. So I would agree, I was going to say Corey Joseph, but I then realized none of the listeners know who Corey Joseph is. Some do, but Don Crotty, Howard Isley, 14-minute a night filler. Yes, yeah. I think that'd be great. Like in roster construction and player development construction, I think that would be great if they're able to do that next year.
Is management committed to get a top 3 pick this year, or at least finish in the bottom 3?
What are you seeing?
I saw an 18-0 run with 2 rookies on the court, 2 second-year guys, and Johnny Juzang. I saw 3 turnovers by one guy, George, and 3 missed threes by another, Juzang. I didn't see any substitutions, and now I've got other games in my brain, but I don't think I remember a timeout either.
I don't know if I buy that. I'll quibble on that one a little bit. I don't think Will's coaching the game. I think Will is willing to let players. Here's what I mean by that. There's almost an implication to what you said there that Will's coaching a game recklessly, or
no, I don't think Will coaches recklessly. 100%. I do not think Will coaches recklessly. I think Will has a great attention to detail. I think he picks his words with the media very carefully and precisely to give exact answers to exact questions. And from what I've been told from people who've worked with him, that's how he moves through life, which is how you would want your NBA head coach to move through life. So a sub or a timeout, I don't think that was an accident.
So I think the way I would phrase it is if Cody Williams is going out there for a 7-minute stretch, Cody Williams is getting a 7-minute stretch.
Yeah.
Unless he does something.
Okay, I can see that.
Unless he does something egregious, like doesn't run back defensively, doesn't rotate, doesn't run the play, right? As long as he's executing the principles of what what Will wants as a head coach and is doing those things, then he gets his 7-minute stretch, regardless of the run. Mm-hmm. That if Kyle Filipowski goes out there against Jonas Valanciunas and is just being bullied, well, there's some real value to have him being bullied for 5 minutes. Like, see what it's like. I talked to Jonas Valanciunas before the game the other day. That's the largest man I've ever seen in my whole life. Kyle Filipowski looked like a third grader against a high school senior the other night. And Kyle Filipowski is 7 feet, 240 pounds.
Yeah.
That man is so huge. There's a real value to Kyle Filipowski. Like when he's just manhandled by Jonas Valanciunas and he's in May and he's doing an extra set, he's going to be like, okay, I got to do this set, right? Like he's going to remember that in the weight room in June. And so I think that in the sense of that, the whole season has always been far more important for player development than wins and losses and the 7 and 8 minute stretches that a player's designed to have are there. But at the same time, like when Isaiah Collier just literally couldn't make a shot earlier this year, Will didn't keep. There's a point where it just gets too egregious, right? And Cody Williams was really not good for a while, and like you just stopped playing for a while. Like you can't go so far, right? There's a limit to what you can do here. Once they're executing correctly and playing the game correctly and doing kind of what is being asked of them, then you can decide, okay, well, I'm not going to pull them just because it's a 12-0 run, because that's not the most important thing. Having them learn how to play through this 12-0 run is probably more important.
I get all that.
I don't mean to put it on you. Someone could have heard what you said, and basically, I don't think Will Hardy is sitting out there and consciously allowing a 12-0 or trying to allow an 18-0 run in some capacity, is what I'm saying.
And it should also be pointed out he didn't have 5 guys who play a lot of minutes, most of whom start. But 5 guys who play a lot of minutes were not available that night. So, I mean,
right.
He can't reach down and sub those 5 guys in because they're not dressed.
Right. Have there been nights where the run's going, you're like, in a regular season, maybe you make a change here or do something, and instead you're going to let these guys try to work through it? Yeah, sure.
Well, David just dropped. Well, we had to end it there anyway. All right, well, thank you, David, if you're out there in the universe somewhere. Jake, let's take a break. We got Pablo Mastroni, RSL head coach, coming up next. It's 97.5 The Zone.